All right, everybody, here we go. Welcome to Better Call Paul on behalf of Performance Title and Escrow, Trident Title, and Synergy Title. We have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Paul Krasker, in the house for a short live question and answers. Anything that you have that you want to chat about, title insurance, if you want to chat about settlement, or if you just have a real estate contract question, we're going to get those solved today. So I have 3 questions up on deck from Mr. Krasker, and then if anybody else has one live, we will let you guys jump in and ask away, and then we will share what we have coming up as well. So, Paul, welcome. How are you?
Doing great. How you doing?
All good, all good. All right, so here we go. Question number 1. This is one from Nancy Jennings. So the short version of the question is there a time limit on having a deposit returned to a buyer once a contract has been canceled? And basically what's happening is they have an escrow check that's tied up. The seller is not sure if he's going to give it back or not. Buyer is demanding it back immediately, and if not, they want to, file suit to get that money back. Is there an actual time frame that is mandatory that once the contract is dead for whatever reason, the seller has to release those funds so that the buyer can move on with their life?
No, there's no specific date upon which the escrow agent is required to release it. Of course, there's the 10-day cooldown period before you could do anything pursuant to paragraph 16 of the contract. So even if they delayed it for a week, you'd still have 3 more days before you could take any legal action. So and even then, you're required to request mediation.
So in a case like this, and Nancy, if you want to chime in, jump in, just to add. So buyer, is done with the deal, wants to get out. Seller is disgruntled, not sure if they're going to, hasn't signed off on it yet, saying that, yes, release the escrow. What's your advice? I heard you say the 10-day cool down thing. So maybe you could explain that a little to people that don't get it.
Yeah, so if I were representing the buyer, I would write a letter to the seller and saying, you are required by law to release this. If you fail to do so, I'll be forced to start accruing attorney's fees and costs associated with this matter, and they will be reimbursed to me pursuant to paragraph 17 of the contract. If you're unwilling to release the deposit, then after the 10-day cool down period in paragraph 16, then we must mediate. Here are the 2 mediators I propose, but I'm open to anyone that you have as well. But I need to hear from you within the next 2 days. If I don't hear from you in the next 2 days, I will assume that you're unwilling to give that money back, and I will assume that you're unwilling to mediate, and I would just proceed forward with litigation. And usually that gets a response.
I'm hearing 2 things. One was 10 days to cool down.
Well, you're not allowed to do anything for 10 days.
Okay, so this attorney, the ink was still wet. And this attorney is threatening lawsuit, like immediately.
Yeah.
Money needs to be released today by 5 o'clock. This was yesterday.
Ask him.
And the seller
I would just
says, I'm not sure. Seller says, I want to think about this.
Yeah. So if there's a dispute regarding escrow, buyer and seller will have 10 days after the date conflicting demands for the escrow deposit are made to attempt to resolve such dispute, failing which buyer and seller shall submit the dispute to mediation. Period.
10 days.
So there's 10 days to work it out.
Okay, gotcha. That's my concern.
Okay. And if anybody writes you a letter like that,
yeah,
I would simply respond with, do you have any statutory or case law to suggest this 24-hour time period is required?
Thank you.
And in that case where, I think of it almost like an inspection period where, if the inspection period was 7 days and on the 4th day they say, hey, we're good, let's move on. Is that if the seller comes back on day 3 and says, look, I don't feel like waiting 10 days and telling you I'm not releasing the money, let's move this on to mediation. Is that okay? Or do they just wait the 10 days regardless before that would start?
Yeah.
Because often, the seller, yes, after that first day, or the buyer, whatever side, after the first day, they're furious, but then the next day they say, listen, I've thought about it. Like in Nancy's example, they say, look, I've thought about it. don't really care about the 10 days. I'm not letting the money go without a fight. I'm not waiting 8 more days.
Yeah, you don't have to wait the 10 days. It's 10 days from conflicting demands. So if I turn back to the escrow agent and I say, I represent the buyer, I've timely canceled this contract, I want my money back, and the seller doesn't say anything, then the 10-day time period technically hasn't started to click.
Makes sense.
If the seller says, hold on a minute, I'm trying to decide whether you were acting in good faith or not, then, I would think they're afforded a day or two to determine their position. And from that position, that's where the 10 days starts.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, title insurance question. What happens with the money for title insurance, or where does that money go? So a seller pays for title insurance or a buyer pays for title insurance, depending on if it's, Palm Beach or Broward. How is that money applied, or what happens with that?
Okay, so when you pay for title insurance, sellers, Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Dade County, the buyer pays. That goes to the title agent. In our case, it's Performance Title or Trident Title. And we're obligated to send a portion of that money, 30 or 40%, depending on the purchase price, to the underwriter so that they can establish reserves and they can get paid for the work and the risk that they're taking on the deal. And the rest of that money goes to the title agent, and that's what they use to pay roughly the 12 hours on average for handling a closing.
Makes sense. Awesome. Okay, Sherry had an interesting come up with a timestamp thing. And basically what happened is she's using one of the electronic signature programs. She sends something out. They're trying to get a contract in or a document in before a certain time. The timestamp comes back. This is kind of a tech question too, I guess, but the timestamp comes back and it's in Pacific time. So we're obviously here in Eastern time. The timestamp comes back and it's Pacific time. So it's 3 hours off of what we're actually working on. And I guess that kind of becomes an issue because they wanted it by 5, but it says a certain time. Have you seen anything or any issues with that on a contract where, a time stamping issue becomes some kind of an issue? Or Sherry, if you want to add to that, go ahead.
Well, I mean, Paul, my point was, what's the point of the timestamp if it's not right?
Well, it is right.
Yeah.
If it was received at 2 p.m. PCH, then it's 5 p.m. EST, right? I mean, that is the correct time. It's just in a wrong zone, and everybody can reallocate that to show what it is. So I don't have a problem with that. I thought you were saying that somebody rolled back their DigiSign like they do when you're, messing with the odometer on a car. But I've had people, Sherry, I've had people who missed a deadline because people don't realize if the day ends on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, then it rolls over to 5 p.m. on the next business day. Well, I've had people who tried to give notice and they forgot it's 5 p.m. So at 7 p.m. at night, we got something that said, 4 p.m. PCH or PCT, and they were trying to get around it that way. They just adjusted to a Pacific Coast time and argued, well, the contract doesn't specifically say East Coast time. It just says 5 p.m. and we did it before 5 p.m.
In that case, how did that end up working out? Because that is I could see that now that you said that, I could see someone trying to set that scam up and having a valid argument.
Yeah, and I don't think it was this contract time period. And
I'm even thinking about traveling buyers, like for real, where this could happen. Imagine they're from LA and they're moving to Florida, and they're in LA when they sign it. So they're thinking 5 o'clock, honestly, not even trying to get around it, but they're honestly.
Yeah. I was going to get it. The current version of the contract, which is dated from 2014 on in this language, says 5 p.m. and then it puts parentheses where the property is located, end parentheses.
Got it.
And I think that was put in there because of a case where somebody did it, where they went back to Pacific Coast time and got a time stamp that way.
Makes sense.
So
I
now
could
it's
see that
clear.
really becoming an issue. That could definitely, that could actually, I guess it, people could try to beat around the bush with that, but it could really happen,
Now it's clear, but when it happened to me several years ago, I couldn't give the people a definitive answer on whether we could keep the money or not.
Sure. So 5 o'clock local time. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else with any questions? If not, we are going to let you know what's coming up, and we're going to let Mr. Krasker go nice and early today. Anybody else? Any questions? Title, settlement, contracts, anything going on in your world?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you if there are issues. And just to give you an example, somebody came to me with a topic that they'd like me to speak on earlier today. And instead of me speaking on it, I knew somebody that I've referred these kind of cases to, and I reached out to them, and we'll have a guest speaker come and talk on that issue at the beginning of August. But if you guys come up with things, if I don't know it backwards and forwards, I'll find the person who does and have them come on.
Hey, Paul, Anna Niehaus, I don't know if you can see this, Ryan. Anna Niehaus has written, she's wondering if we can do mineral rights for beginners. See that?
Yeah, we got it. So actually, guys, that is something that's been coming up a lot in our world. Crazy enough, it's 3 or 4 times just over the past week. So next week's topic is going to be all about basically everything you need to know, or what you need to know about mineral rights with contracts and things like that, because it has came up. So we have that on deck for us. We have tax deeds. We have short sales. We have service animals and new issues and things arising with different forms of service animals. So we have, I believe it's the next 6 weeks or 7 weeks of topics laid out. So all through July and all through August, instead of doing these live question and answers, we're going to give you guys a topic every week. And you'll start seeing the marketing and the flyers with the dates and the times for all those coming out. We're going to stick with them Thursdays at 4 still, so that time will stay through July and August. And then by the end of August, we'll see what's going on in the world with COVID and, what happens, and we'll go from there. But if you do have any topics, I think right now we have 2 blank spaces left. So if you do have topics, feel free to text me or Gab or Melissa or somebody and send them in. And as always, we wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. So keep sending your deals for Trident Title, Performance Title, Synergy Title. If you need anything, reach out to myself, Melissa Kidwell, Gab Bryce, Dave Ward, Tracy Cinder. We're all on the call too. So if anybody needs anything with that, give us a yell. And if you do need anything or any attorney services, make sure you reach out to Mr. Krasker. Anything final closing words there, Paul?
All set.
All right, go win this golf tournament, all right?
Thanks.
See you guys.